So I'm Kate. I had an acquired brain injury in March 2021. I was taken very ill, found at home after about 18 hours, accompanied to Brighton Hospital with the air ambulance crew. I was not expected to survive. My family were told to say goodbye. I am stubborn, and I woke up in intensive care about a week or so later. It then became apparent another week or so after that that there was some problems. I was really struggling to understand when the housekeeping would come round and ask for lunch choices. So I remember not being able to retain this, and I couldn't think and process, and apparently sentences that I was saying were very short and I couldn't find the right words. I was coming up with all sorts of random and interesting alternatives apparently, and it turned out at that point through a brain scan that I was diagnosed as having had a stroke as well, which was somewhat a shock to the system. I think I spent the majority of time probably crying and being really quite cross about everything. So I was in hospital then started in Brighton for a month, then went over to Eastbourne for a week or so, and then across to Hastings because I had to have some surgery on a major burn on my arm, having been laying next to a storage heater for 18 hours before I was found originally, and then dispatched home in the middle of April to begin a very different life. So yeah, at that point then I was off work for over a year, 14 months I was away. I had input from the community stroke team for the first 3 months or so. And then it was really just a case of getting on with it, I think, and trying to navigate the way forwards. I remember being really cross about it. I just wanted to pretend it hadn't all happened really, and I just wanted to go back to work, and I wanted everything to be the way it was. You know, I was, whilst knowing at that point I could see things that weren't quite working the way they used to work. I would struggle with some of my processing or decision making, problem solving. Those were things that were quite complex. I would have weekly visits from a rehab worker and have a task explained to me, and I would think, yeah, that's fine, I can do that. And then I would try and do it, and it just wouldn't work. And I couldn't understand why. At that point, I just really didn't know quite why things weren't working the way they should do. But yeah, so it was quite a period of time. So I was at home, yeah, just trying to adjust to life being very different, things working in a slightly different way. So I was aware of Headway Sussex because in my job, my professional role, I'd had some engagement with the organisation that way. I knew Headway was local, I knew they worked with people with brain injury. I didn't really know much more at that point, and it was about 6 months after I came home, so I used Twitter quite a lot. I had done for work already, and I remember there being a tweet from Headway about sensory overload. And I remember replying and going, oh my word, yes, this is now a whole new world that I'm navigating. This isn't something I used to particularly struggle with. Now I really do. And from that, I think a couple more exchanges on Twitter, and then I had a phone conversation with Sam, who runs some of the groups and is the hospital liaison, who gently encouraged and persuaded me to join one of the groups online at that point. And I remember being, you know, really quite reticent about it. I was a bit, I don't really know, I don't think I'm that bad. There's probably lots more people that need the service than I do, but actually I'm so pleased that he persisted with nudging me towards trying it out, and I went to the Eastbourne face-to-face support groups as well, because it's been one of the things that's given me the most amount of support and guidance and advice and information that I don't think I would have had otherwise. And just being able to talk to people in a very, in similar situations. So the brain injury might have come about through all sorts of different reasons, whether that's through a tumour or an accident, stroke such as I had. The consequences can be quite similar, and it really is good to talk to people and know that you're not alone, because it can feel really isolating sometimes. And also, yeah, just the advice, the information, checking out with others, talking to them about whether it be about PIP and how that works, or for me, one of the things was I went on a fear of flying course last May. It was one of the things I'd had on my bucket list before everything happens, and I was determined to do it. And then I went abroad the following month. But actually the advice and guidance I got from that group of people, and about, tick the box to request the special assistance at the airport, because I wouldn't have done that. I would have been, I'm fine. I'm so glad I did that, because I would have found it completely overwhelming without that extra bit of support to get me through just the airports. Things have changed a lot since I last flew over 20 years ago. So just that on its own, let alone when you're processing and information is having to work a lot harder and is struggling. So yeah, being able to talk to those people, to get that advice, information, to just check in. So I attend, it's an online weekly group I try and get to most weeks, but yeah, also go to a monthly face-to-face group. I would have been quite lost, I think, without Headway. But it's really interesting when I reflect on it and think, I knew about Headway. I knew that Headway existed. I knew that they worked with people with brain injury. I never really quite understood what that meant. What is the brain injury? What is the consequences? What are the services? What's out there? Oh, it's it's not appropriate for me because I'm not that bad. I'm able to do certain things, and other people are more deserving of the services. So I should step away. But actually, I think the overwhelming message has been, actually, you are worthy of the support. You should access it, you can access it. That's what Headway's here for. We're here to support and guide and advise, and just navigate life being very different these days. I am now at the beginning of the journey or becoming a community ambassador for Headway Sussex, which is something I'm really pleased about and really excited about. It's a new role in terms of Headway, the organisation, so something that we're working out where we go and what we do with it in the future. So for me, when I think I spent about a year or so being, really quite cross about what had happened to me, and I just wanted life to go back to normal, to be what it was. But eventually I think I reached a point of realising I was using an awful lot of energy in being cross about this, in almost trying to fight this, and just thinking, well, what I need to do, I think, is try and change my mindset somehow, and maybe do something a bit more constructive in my job role as well. I feel quite privileged that I'm probably in a position where I can make some changes or raise awareness. So one of the things that came about through the group, the Futures group that I attend, was people in the group were asked if they would be willing to contribute to some training that was being delivered to local authority adult social care social workers across June. There were 4 sessions run by different people across the month, and would we be interested in maybe sharing our experiences? So this was for people, I like to say, you know, my brain works differently these days. I still, in terms of identity, struggle with some of those phrases like survivor of. I was like, yeah, I am, but I don't know if that's where I want to be. But my brain works differently. But were we happy to share our experiences of either going through this or maybe family members or carers? So I put my name forward because I thought it would be quite a good stepping stone for getting back to work as well in terms of what I do. It came about in the end that what I didn't do sort of that session about sharing my personal experience, but I did some training to the social workers with another professional colleague who's a case manager and occupational therapist, to the social workers about the assessment process and how they could do that, and also developing their understanding of the impact of brain injury and what that might look like or sound like. I remember when I was doing some of the research for this, there was an online webinar about people with brain injury, and there was an particular example of, you might see somebody, they might tell you that their memory doesn't work properly, you'll ask them and they'll say, oh, I've got a diary, but then you still have to put it in the diary, and you have to, and I remember just thinking, my word, this is me. This is literally word for word me, which was quite an interesting reflection. But from that, so I got involved in delivering the training, which was a really good thing to do. I really enjoyed that, and it was about like, well, hopefully, you know, if we can contribute to social workers' understanding of brain injury and where they can access some resources, they're not going to become experts, but they'll know where to go to access the information and advice. And from that, I had then also been thinking about maybe becoming a trustee possibly of Headway. Had some conversations with the chief executive at the time, and what we discussed and talked about was actually they'd really like a community ambassador who could raise awareness, so of the organisation, of the services that are provided, you know, those thresholds. So as I had said earlier, you know, I was cancelling myself out thinking it didn't apply to me, but actually it's making people aware that they can access these services at that point. And it ties in, I think, really well with my job because I teach, so I'm very used to standing up in front of groups of people. My background before I was teaching was in fostering, social worker, so I'm very used to standing at information stands, talking to people about an organisation, about what they do, about raising that awareness. So it felt like a really good way of using my skills and my knowledge. You know, I enjoy chatting to people, I chat quite a lot, so it was a really good way, hopefully, of trying to sort of channel that into something with a focus where we could really raise awareness of Headway, the good work that is done, the services that are there, and widen that out, you know, in the region. And for me, it's a bit of a way of giving back as well. So yeah, you know, I've accessed some amazing support. So I wanted to do something, you know, some way of being able to contribute to maybe, you know, making people aware of what's out there, and you know, you might not need it now. You might think that you won't need the services, but you never know what might happen to you or friends or family. You know, life has a way of throwing some horrible curveballs sometimes, but actually if you know that there's organisations out there where you can get some help and some support, then it's always worth, you know, if you've got something on the notice board stashed away in a drawer or something like that, and that little bit in your mind is like, actually, do you know what, I remember that there's somewhere we can go to. So yeah, I'm really looking forward, I think, to making connections, you know, across Sussex, you know, hopefully with all sorts of maybe community and fundraising groups and so on, getting out there and just spreading the word, talking about Headway, about the services, about developing people's understanding of brain injury. For me, it was like, oh, you've had a head injury, or did you get, car accident or knocked off your bike? So I've learned an awful lot over the last year or so actually about acquired brain injury and about the consequences and about what people live with, what we navigate every day.